Welcome back, fellow survivors of wood-paneled basements and Saturday morning sugar comas. Today, we're cracking open our time capsule from 1977, the year that secretly programmed Gen X kids to become the delightfully cynical, pop culture-obsessed adults we are today. Before we had cell phones, social media, or parents who actually knew where we were after school, we had 1977, the year that gave us motorcycle cops with perfect hair, space adventures with improbable physics, and the revolutionary concept of playing video games without leaving your house. If you're already feeling those nostalgic tingles, hit that subscribe button faster than Punch could write a speeding ticket. And if you were born after 1990, stick around to discover why your Gen X boss still has a Death Star paperweight on their desk. Let's kick things off with the TV phenomenon that made every kid want to be a California highway patrolman, or at the very least, own a sweet motorcycle. Chips premiered on September 15, 1977, bringing officers Frank, Poncherello, and John Baker into our living rooms and onto our playground pretend games for years to come. NBC struck gold with this buddy cop drama that somehow made the California Highway Patrol seem like the coolest job on the planet. No disrespect to actual highway patrol officers, but writing speeding tickets isn't exactly high drama. Yet Chips turned routine traffic stops into action-packed adventures, all set to one of the catchiest theme songs in TV history. Let's talk about Eric Estrada's Ponch for a moment. This man's smile had more wattage than all of Southern California's power grid. Before Chips, no one thought highway patrol officers could be sex symbols, but Estrada's Ponch changed all that. His perfect hair, which somehow remained immaculate despite hours in a motorcycle helmet, and blinding white teeth made him an instant heartthrob. Parents' magazines were suddenly filled with letters from concerned mothers whose daughters had plastered their bedroom walls with Ponch posters. Larry Wilcox's John Baker was the straight-laced, by-the-book, blonde counterpart who, well, honestly, who remembers much about John except that he wasn't Ponch? Poor Larry Wilcox, always in the shadow of Estrada's megawatt charisma. The classic straight man to Ponch's rule-bending maverick, Baker was essential to the show's dynamic, even if he couldn't compete with Estrada for magazine covers. What made Chips so irresistible to Gen X kids was how it perfectly balanced action with a weird kind of wholesomeness. Despite being about law enforcement, the show rarely featured guns or serious violence. Most episodes involved ridiculous traffic situations, minor crimes, and Ponch's latest romantic pursuit. The stakes were incredibly low, yet we watched it like it was high drama. And let's take a moment to appreciate those motorcycle chase scenes, which usually involved Ponch and John somehow catching up to cars going twice their speed. The laws of physics didn't apply to the Chips officers, who could corner like professional racers and jump their bikes over conveniently placed ramps that appeared whenever the plot needed some excitement. Be honest, how many of you tried to modify your bikes to look like Ponch and John's motorcycles? Personally, I taped a playing card to my bicycle spokes to simulate the engine noise and spent hours practicing my pulling someone over hand gestures. My neighbors were not impressed. But while some of us were playing motorcycle cop on our Schwinns, others were in theaters witnessing something that would change pop culture forever. If Chips defined 1977 TV for young Gen Xers, Star Wars rewired our entire brains when it hit theaters on May 25th. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say there was life before Star Wars and life after Star Wars, and they were completely different existences. Before Star Wars, science fiction was either deadly serious, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, or campy, like Flash Gordon. George Lucas somehow managed to create something that felt both mythic and accessible. Space fantasy disguised as sci-fi that appealed to kids who'd never watched a space movie before. The theatrical experience of Star Wars in 1977 was unlike anything before or since. Remember, this was before the internet, before trailers were dissected frame by frame online, before movie spoilers could ruin your experience. Most kids walked into theaters knowing almost nothing about what they were about to see, which made that opening sequence, the Star Destroyer pursuing Princess Leia's ship, all the more mind-blowing. And mind-blowing it was. That opening crawl, the twin sons of Tatooine, the Millennium Falcon jump into hyperspace, Darth Vader's entrance, the lightsaber duel, the trench run. Each scene became permanently etched into the collective consciousness of an entire generation. What's hard to convey to younger generations is just how massive Star Wars was as a cultural phenomenon. Lines wrapped around theaters for months. Months! I know people who saw it 20, 30, even 50 times in theaters. This wasn't just because it was a great movie, which it was, but because there was no other way to experience it again once it left theaters. No streaming, no Blu-ray, not even VHS yet for most families. If you wanted to relive Star Wars, you had to keep buying tickets. Then there were the toys. Oh, the toys. Kenner, the company that secured the merchandising rights, was completely unprepared for the demand. They famously couldn't produce action figures fast enough for Christmas 1977, leading to the infamous early bird certificate package, literally an empty box with a promise that toys would come later. And you know what? Kids went nuts for it anyway. Can you imagine any company today getting away with selling an IOU for a Christmas present? When the figures finally arrived, they became the currency of childhood. Your social status was directly tied to how many Star Wars figures you owned and whether you had the rare ones, like the Jawa with a vinyl cape. Playground trades were conducted with the seriousness of international peace negotiations. I'll give you a hammerhead and a Jawa for your Greedo. Throw in a Death Squad commander and we have a deal. For Gen X kids, Star Wars wasn't just a movie. It was a lifestyle. We played with the toys, wore the t-shirts, carried the lunch boxes, and quoted the dialogue incessantly. Saying, "May the Force be with you," wasn't nerdy. It was practically our generation's secret handshake. While the characters became our heroes, the mythology seeped into our play. Suddenly, sticks became lightsabers, and every playground argument could be settled with a declaration of, "I am your father," followed by an obligatory, "No!" Even though, fun fact, Vader never actually says, "Luke, I am your father," in the movie. That's a collective misremembering. How many of you still have your original Star Wars figures tucked away somewhere? And how many of you are kicking yourselves for not keeping them in their original packaging? Drop a comment below with your favorite Star Wars memory from 1977. But while Star Wars was conquering theaters, another revolution was quietly happening in living rooms across America. In October 1977, Atari launched the Video Computer System, later renamed the Atari 2600. And suddenly, you didn't need to go to an arcade to play video games. You could experience all the cutting-edge excitement of moving a square ball back and forth across your TV screen. From the comfort of your own home, let's be real. By today's standards, the Atari 2600 was about as sophisticated as a potato clock. The graphics looked like they were designed by someone who'd only had abstract shapes described to them verbally. So a tank is sort of a square with a line sticking out of it? Got it. But in 1977, this was technological wizardry that bordered on actual magic. The Atari 2600 retailed for $199, about $950 in today's money, making it a serious investment for families. This wasn't a casual purchase. This was a major Christmas present that replaces all other presents and requires months of begging kind of purchase. Kids drafted persuasive essays to convince their parents, performed extra chores, and promised impossible improvements in behavior, all in pursuit of that wood-paneled miracle box. For parents who grew up with board games and playing outside, the concept was bewildering. You want us to pay how much to play video games? On the TV? The same TV where we watch the Carol Burnett show? And you want to do this instead of going outside? It was a tough sell, but amazingly, enough parents caved that the Atari 2600 became the must-have item of the late 70s. The launch games were, let's say, minimalist. Combat gave us tank battles with all the visual fidelity of geometric refrigerator magnets. Air-sea battle simulated warfare with what appeared to be Morse code symbols shooting at each other. And then there was Pong, the game that answered the question, what if tennis, but squares? Yet, despite these limitations, or perhaps because of them, these games captured our imagination. with graphics so basic your brain had to fill in the blanks, making the experience more personal and immersive in a strange way. When your fighter pilot was literally just a dot, you had to imagine the cockpit, the G-forces, the dramatic music. We were beta testing what would later be called visualization techniques. The Atari joystick deserves special mention. A simple plastic stick with a single red button that somehow always felt like it was about to break. It was ergonomically designed for no human hand size, guaranteed to give you blisters after an hour of play, and we loved it. That joystick probably did more to develop Gen X thumb strength than any other device in history. How many of you still hear that distinctive pong noise in your dreams? That electronic boop that seemed to exist in only one place in the universe, inside the Atari. And how many of you tried to convince your parents that Atari was educational because it improved hand-eye coordination? While we were booping and beeping on our Ataris, the outside world had its own soundtrack playing. You couldn't turn on a radio in 1977 without hearing the unmistakable thump 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 of disco. This was the year the Bee Gees officially became falsetto kings with the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, which wouldn't be released until November, but the singles were already dominating the airwaves. For Gen X kids, disco wasn't just music our parents listened to. It was the soundtrack to our roller skating adventures. Every town had a roller rink where, for a few dollars, you could strap wheels onto your feet and circle endlessly while disco lights swirled overhead and the Bee Gees crooned about staying alive. Advice that was particularly relevant when attempting to navigate the rink's traffic patterns. The roller rink was where many of us experienced our first taste of social anxiety. Would someone ask you to couple skate during the slow songs? Would you face the humiliation of failing in front of everyone during all skate? Would the cool kids let you join the train during the YMCA? The roller rink was essentially middle school with wheels. All the same drama with the added risk of physical injury. Disco fashion infiltrated even children's clothing in 1977. Bell-bottoms were so wide you could hide small pets in them. Platform shoes added inches to everyone's height while simultaneously increasing their risk of ankle injuries by 500%. And polyester. My God, the polyester. An entire generation wrapped in a fabric that could survive nuclear fallout and never, ever wrinkled. Remember mood rings? Those magical pieces of jewelry that supposedly changed color based on your emotions, but actually just responded to temperature? 1977 was peak mood ring era, with kids comparing their ring colors like they were comparing medical test results. Mine's blue, I'm relaxed. Mine's black, I'm stressed. Mine's stuck on green, I think it's broken. And we can't talk about 1977 fashion without mentioning feathered hair, popularized by Farrah Fawcett's iconic poster that adorned many a bedroom wall. Even kids' hairstyles weren't immune, with parents attempting to recreate Farrah's famous feathers on their reluctant children. Nothing says 1977 school picture like feathered hair and a wide-collared shirt. But beyond the toys, TV, and fashion, 1977 had a distinct feeling to it, a particular flavor of childhood that was unique to Gen X kids. Being a kid in 1977 was fundamentally different from childhood today in ways that shaped Gen X forever. We were the Latchkey generation, the kids who came home from school to empty houses with house keys often hanging around our necks on yarn necklaces. Parents were at work, and we had hours of unsupervised time before they got home. This wasn't seen as neglect. It was just normal. Be home before dark was the only rule many of us had. No cell phones to check in, no GPS tracking, no helicopter parents monitoring our every move, just kids, bikes, and the vague instruction not to do anything stupid. Saturday mornings were sacred in 1977. This was before cable offered 24/7 cartoons. So Saturday morning was the time for kids programming. We'd wake up at dawn, pour ourselves a bowl of cereal with enough sugar to power a small city, and plant ourselves in front of the TV for hours. Parents got to sleep in, kids got their cartoon fix. It was a win-win system that worked perfectly. After-school specials were in their golden age in 1977, teaching us important life lessons through the medium of terrible acting and heavy-handed morality tales. Drugs, peer pressure, divorce. No topic was too serious or awkward for these specials to tackle with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The lack of structured activities meant we had to create our own entertainment. Chips inspired elaborate games of cops and robbers. Star Wars transformed ordinary backyards into alien planets. The Atari encouraged both cooperative play, your turn after I die, and competitive spirit. I got a higher score! The world felt simultaneously bigger and smaller in 1977. Without the internet, knowledge was harder to come by, making the universe seem vast and mysterious. Yet, our daily lives were intensely local, focused on our neighborhoods, schools, and the friends within biking distance. This combination of independence and limited information created the perfect breeding ground for the Gen X traits we now recognize: skepticism, self-reliance, and a certain detached amusement at the world's absurdities. How many of you were Latchkey kids? And do you think it made you more independent or just gave you a head start on perfecting your cereal pouring technique? As we seal our 1977 time capsule, it's clear this was more than just another year. It was a defining moment for Gen X childhood. The seeds of who we would become were planted while watching Ponch and John patrol the highways, Luke Skywalker battle the Empire, and square blocks, pretending to be spaceships on our Ataris. The pop culture in 1977 taught us to dream big. Thanks, Star Wars. Look cool doing it. Thanks, Chips. And entertain ourselves with minimal resources. Thanks, Atari. Maybe that's why Gen X grew up to be the cynical yet hopeful, independent yet nostalgic group we are today. We were the last generation to experience childhood without the internet, cell phones, or constant connectivity. We played outside unsupervised, made our own fun, and developed resilience through skinned knees and neighborhood adventures. But we were also the first generation to experience the early digital revolution, with video games and sci-fi opening doors to new possibilities. So, what was your 1977 time capsule? Did you have the coveted Star Wars action figures? Did you wear out your Atari joystick playing combat? Were you Team Ponch or, unlikely, Team John? Drop your memories in the comments below. If this little trip back to 1977 hit you right in the nostalgia, smash that subscribe button like it's an Atari joystick and you're trying to beat your high score in Space Invaders. Until next time, may the Force be with you. May your roller skates stay tight, and may your parents never find out what you were really doing while they were at work. This is your Gen X Time Capsule Keeper signing off.